Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, a creative content right here in Chesterfield, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Now, we are working our way through the 5 magisterial districts like I like to do at least once a year. Sometimes it's right at the start. Sometimes it sort of flows a little bit depending on schedules. I'm very happy to have Dr. Mark Miller from the Midlothian District, Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors. Dr. Miller, how are you?
I am doing well. Is it too late to say Happy New Year?
I mean, I think you could technically say it as anytime you wanted to. It just kind of depends on, how quickly things have gone since January 1st. And I would imagine for folks like you who have been, busy, obviously Vice Chair, a new opportunity for you, a new experience in your time on the board. Matter of fact, that's kind of where I want to start. We had you on last year. You're still sort of getting used to being on the Board of Supervisors at that point, and now you've come through the election season, elected as Vice Chair by your peers. I'm really curious, what did it mean to you to be selected as Vice Chair of this Board of Supervisors, and is that something that that really sort of has sunk in on some level yet? Have you gotten used to that part of the job?
Well, to be completely honest, it wasn't even something I was looking for.
Right.
I thought it was going to play out very differently.
Right.
As to whether I would be chair, vice. I mean, I just didn't know where it would end up, and I mean, I had just felt like I had just taken off my just getting settled.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just at that point. So being able to be vice chair, it's an incredible honor. I mean, I think that going in, we'd like to move around the opportunity as much as we're able to.
Yeah.
So Kevin did a spectacular job as the chair last year. Jim Engel as a vice chair provided me an opportunity to see how it's done. And I was really touched that Kevin actually nominated me for vice chair. So it's an incredible honor that has been bestowed upon me by my peers. And the hope is that at the end of a year, they're going to think I did a good job.
Yeah, well, I definitely understand it. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in doing these podcasts, and I mentioned this when I talked to Mr. Holland, my colleague Jim McConnell rolled out a Q&A series on his blog, Chesterfield on Point, that I thought was really well done. And I thought what it did was it kind of shined a light a little bit on some of the things that about the various board members that maybe folks on the outside wouldn't see. We're so used to seeing Board of Supervisors members at meetings or at public events and that kind of thing. And I'm curious to get sort of your background here in terms of hobbies and things that who you are outside of those events. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that you like to spend your time doing outside of board business, away from the county, away from microphones and all that kind of stuff. What are some of your hobbies and passions?
Right, I'm a long distance runner, so I'm considering getting ready for my 11th marathon.
Wow.
For the Richmond, it'll be the 10th time I've ran Richmond marathon. So I was up the last couple of weeks thinking about the 10K coming up, and it's like, all right, I need to settle back into the kind of a routine of running again. So the idea is to get in. I mean, I've been involved with sports backers since 2008, when I ran my first marathon. So now here we are, and my wife is like, you want to go back and run in the marathon? It's good timing because I was concerned that it would conflict actually with VACO, Virginia Association of Counties conference is going to actually be the 1 week prior to, which works out perfectly because we are already in what we call taper. Yeah. So I've already gotten in my 20 milers, and I can sit and kind of taper with going out to VACO, then come back the next weekend and run the marathon. As
a person with a sports background, I am always astonished at people who long distance run. It is just one of those things I just do not, under any circumstances, understand how or sometimes why, but definitely the how. But I also understand for a lot of runners, there's so much that you get out of it aside from just the the physical aspect of running. There's a certain mental and almost like spiritual, right? Like time, it's almost like meditative. And the more long distance runners I've talked to, they've described it that way. Now, speaking of long distance running, now that's a segue. That's a special segue right there.
All right.
Okay. It is budget season, and as we get into sort of these county topics, as I like to do with these, I like to drill into the district updates as we go further into it. I do want to talk a little bit about the budget. As this podcast is released, it's right there at the time when the county administrator's budget proposal is being presented to you as a Board of Supervisors. And I'm just curious to get some of the things maybe that you're thinking about going into this cycle. What are some of the keys for you as we get deeper into the spring?
It's a great question in that, I mean, this is the second time now that I've been through the budget season. So it's not as if I'm seeing it for the first time.
Right.
Coming in a special election, and as my training wheels were still on,
Right.
and now that they're off, I mean, I can see that there's a very different tenor this year than last year. I can see that we are very much all on the same page regarding how the Board of Supervisors is looking at the budget, and also how the school board and this, Chesterfield County Public Schools are. So it's a very different, we're all working in tandem, which from what I'm hearing, that hasn't always occurred.
Right.
So with that occurring, we're recognizing also that the challenge isn't really between money, between the Board of Supervisors and the schools, but it really is on the state level.
Right.
The JLARC study came out. It very clearly mentioned, clearly stated that the funding that they were working with, the way that they're figuring out how to fund the state, the schools, was just done in a way that wasn't accurate. So now I'm hoping that the state will come through with the change on how they go about doing that.
Yeah, and for folks who haven't, we actually had Mark Gribben from JLARC come and talk on the podcast about that study, about the model, about what were some of the reasons why the state's funding formula is so misguided in terms of what it's giving to schools. And certainly that would be a boon, not just for Chesterfield, but for a lot of divisions across the state, if the Commonwealth was funding schools in the manner in which, essentially it should. And this was a study that was at its most basic level directed by the General Assembly. So I'm really curious to see how that shakes out as well. I know that from a countywide perspective, I mean, one of the things that's really important to you is walkability. You and I have had some conversations about that, and I'm curious to get sort of your point of view on that, because I know that as a county that is 440 square miles or whatever the technical number is, it's one thing to try to figure out what is walkable, right? But beyond that, it feels like one of those things where the more you can do it, the more impact it has exponentially, right? The more opportunities that you take to make things more walkable now, it helps in the future. And there's certainly a sustainability aspect to that. Why do you feel like walkability is something that's really important to you as you go forward and doing your business with the county?
Well, going back to the fact that, I'm a long distance runner.
Right.
There was a wonderful article that came out, I think, in the New York Times, like, what's better for you, walking or running?
Right.
And so both are a wonderful way of exercising and getting out, being outside.
Right.
We tend to want to run. I'm a mental health professional, right? When we run from building to car to building, we end up going from air conditioning or heating this time of year to these kind of pods. And so to be outside, I mean, some folks have been referring to me as the sidewalk supervisor, because
there are worse titles.
There are, and I will take it as sidewalk supervisor, because I'm always thinking about how we can get folks outside. It's mental health, it's all those kind of things, and it's exercise. And it makes just common sense. Right. I also want to take a look at public safety, in that when I'm driving around the county, and certainly in Midlothian, when I see folks that are walking on Old Buckingham, oh my gosh, it is so dangerous. Or on Winterfield, and there just aren't any sidewalks there. That they're taking your life into your own hands, and that just is unnecessary. And public safety for me is one of my top priorities.
Right. Now, you mentioned Old Buckingham, and you mentioned public safety. That kind of segues perfect into my next question from a countywide perspective, which is, and this is obviously sort of district specific too, a nice segue to some of the district specific topics here. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on why road safety is one of your sort of focal points as you go forward.
Well, speeding in general is probably the daily email that I receive.
Interesting.
And folks expressing concerns around how quickly people are driving and putting folks at risk.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. We've talked about this before. Old Otterdale, Old Gun, Old Bon Air, Old Buckingham. These are narrow, windy roads, so that when it's raining, it just provides a whole nother level of concern. So what I say to folks is, don't forget that we all kind of get into our own mind, altered state of consciousness while we're driving.
Yeah.
And we forget that, oh my gosh, why was there I didn't even realize I was going 35 when we should have been going 25 in all of the subdivisions. The most is 25 miles an hour. So always be thinking about a kid that could be playing or just paying attention to the weather.
Yeah.
But we're always thinking about where we're going as opposed to where we are.
Right. That's a really good point.
And so where are we? I mean, we don't want to be in any situation. I know I don't want to be where I have to somehow carry the burden of accidentally hitting someone.
Right.
And or the tragedy of that. Yeah. And then recognizing, I really wasn't in the moment.
Right.
And recognize what was going on.
Yeah. As we dig in a little deeper here to the Midlothian specific topics, I want to start with schools. Obviously, we had that groundbreaking at A.M. Davis not too terribly long ago. I know that Midlothian Middle School is something that you probably get a lot of questions about. Can you give us an update on sort of where things stand with that one?
Yeah, well, I'm a former high school English teacher myself, so the always paying attention to how are we supporting our students, how are we supporting our teachers, support staff. Midlothian Middle, we are still looking at our options as far as that's concerned.
Okay.
I am leaning toward the possibility of moving Midlothian Middle. This is a once in 100-year decision,
for sure,
and so we want to get it right if we're going to do it. So we are taking our time through the process. We are paying attention to we're thinking 27 is what we're thinking about. So we'll figure it out. But the process is moving forward as we continue to look at other potential sites and if we how much is it going to cost? All those things.
Yeah. Springline of District 60, obviously one that is near and dear to your heart. Last year when you were here, we talked about that. I think you had just been to the groundbreaking at that point. Obviously, there's been a lot of progress on that project, the placing of the beam, for example, not too terribly long ago. How excited are you about that project coming online here pretty soon?
That project in Springline District 60 is a vital to setting the bar all the way down Midlothian toward Westchester Commons. So I love what it's looking like. The parking garage looks like it's in place, and I'm hoping we're not too far away. We're getting ready to kind of do a hard hat tour, and see what it is. But setting that bar is so important. With that and Stonebridge right across the street, and how they're going to work in tandem. We're discussing about putting a walkable bridge actually over Midlothian.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And I want it to look like a stone bridge.
Oh, there you go.
And because that is probably the most important entrance into Chesterfield County.
Yeah.
So we want that to be a really strong entrance and also be able to get across Midlothian in a safe way.
Yeah.
So they're going to work in tandem with each other.
Yeah. I can also imagine, too, because of the nature of that entire project and sort of, as you said, it really kind of sets the tone for a lot of things. Speaking of setting the tone, in terms of county services, I think we always, we focus on so much that the county does, but libraries are one of the absolute bedrocks from a variety of different standpoints. Think about just the way that those buildings are used. I know that last time you were here, there was construction and site work that was being done on the new Midlothian Library, which obviously had its grand opening ribbon cutting not long ago. I know that was a very special moment for you to be able to be there at that momentous occasion. Something I know that community has been, really itching for and hoping for that would eventually come. What was that moment like for folks in Midlothian, folks like you, who, as you know, well know, have been waiting such a long time for that to come online?
It has always been the most, the busiest of all of the libraries. So our community was really kind of itching to get that open. So I was getting regular emails when is this happening? This is a testament to Chesterfield County making the point that these kind of public spaces are a priority.
Right.
And I also, not just for the current board, but for the previous board, and the work of the previous board with Leslie Haley and Chris Winslow, and I'm not the kind of person that wants to take credit for other people's work, and so it was so important to me that Leslie have an opportunity to speak because it was her vision, and then also to cut the ribbon. So it was initially offered to me to cut the ribbon, and I felt that it should be Leslie to cut the ribbon,
and that's such a poignant idea because. Ultimately, the national, even state sort of politics and all that fun stuff of government is so different from local, because in local government, it is it's your own community, right? Your own concerns, your own future, and having people coming together for something so wonderful like that, and certainly to have Miss Haley back to speak at that. Of the sort of features of the library, what are some of the things that really stand out to you in terms of the what the public's going to be able to do, and obviously it's been ravenous, in my understanding, in terms of the amount of use that building has already gotten in the short amount of time that it's been open. But what are some of the things about that building that really stand out to you the most, and that you're just so excited to have kind of available for the community?
Well, it's wonderful. It's right next to J.B. Watkins.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have the elementary school right next door. When you walk in, there is a hat. It's really like a tip of a hat to the history of the area,
right,
with Midlothian Mines and the mural that is right there, the open space, the opportunity for business to be meeting there. There's some really playful things in the back as far as musical instruments for the kids to play, and just all of the creativity that's there. It is already, I love the word you used, was ravenous. I think that's the right word, that folks we're just waiting to get there. This is a wonderful place to create community.
Yeah, and such a great example of what can happen when all the sides come together for the good of the community. And I think it's a testament to, what we do in local government. All right, last one for you. I'll get you out of here on this one. I'm asking all 5 board members the same sort of final question here. What are some of the challenges that you see facing the county, facing your district specifically, in the coming year? What are some of the things that really kind of are on your radar in terms of challenges for both Chesterfield as a whole and Midlothian specifically?
Great question. The real estate folks like to always say location, location, location.
Right.
And I think I know that Chesterfield is really in the sweet spot of the southeast corridor. I mean, we are within a drive, a day's drive. I remember hearing, I think, upwards of 60%. Don't hold me exactly to that number, of the U.S. population, because in a day drive, you can get to Atlanta, you can get to New York City, you can get to Chicago. I mean, you can really do it in a day drive, and not only and Boston and DC and Philadelphia.
I never thought about it, but that's a really good point.
And as a result, what's happening is, and it makes sense that businesses would be saying, "Hey, this is a really good place to come to," and we're seeing more and more, Chesterfield especially, when folks are coming from other parts of the country and say, "Okay, where do we want to live?" 2 hours from the beach, 2 hours from from Shenandoah, 2 hours from DC. I mean, it really is in a very nice spot. So as a result, I don't want to become a victim of our own success.
Right, that's a really good point.
And so as we continue as a board to work together to figure out, okay, what is the pace of development? What is, let's not get ahead of our skis as far as infrastructure is concerned.
Right.
And we'll just continue to work together to make that work.
Right. Well, Dr. Miller, I really appreciate the time. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast again and talking to us about things going on in Midlothian, certainly things going on in the county. And I think it's safe to say you are going to be very busy throughout the tenure of your vice chairmanship here on the board. But Dr. Miller, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Brad.
All right. Now, make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia, all one word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that your programs are sold. And if you'd like to give us a rating or review, we greatly appreciate it. As always, a video version of our show is available on our YouTube channel, as well as on our website at Chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit feedback anytime, make suggestions, or just reach out to us. You can watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7 and on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. Lastly, check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us to find a number of other ways to connect with Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent and Media Services for all that they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care. From blogs to podcasts, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Newsletters to alerts, social media, the latest community news.
Welcome to the latest installment of This Week in Chesterfield.
How to get in touch, and everything in between. If you want to know about Chesterfield County, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us. Connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.